My name is Jillian Mullen, and I'm presenting a speech on the topic of abortion for Business and Professional Communications with Professor Jenkins. So before we get into the topic, it's really important to know all of the facts that are available to us on abortion. So I've compiled a list of different statistics that were organized by Loxophamosity Ministries Incorporated. And in 2016, they recorded that 887,000 abortions were performed in the United States. And during another report of 957 women, 25% said that they were not ready to have a child, 23% said they couldn't afford a child, 19% said that they didn't want any more kids, less than 0.5% were victims of rape, and 3% were due to fetal health. So we can see that there's a lot of different factors in why women choose to have abortions, and so we should really keep that in mind. So the next list of data I have is when abortions were performed in terms of pregnancy length. So 89% were during the first trimester, which is before the 13th week of gestation. 18% were between 14 and 20 weeks, and 1.3% were greater than 21 weeks. And we can tell from this that most of the abortions were before the woman was full term, or perhaps even showing that she was pregnant, because they were before the 13th week of pregnancy. And it's really important to remember that a lot of women actually get abortions due to financial reasons, which is why 17 states provide public funds to pay for abortions, but this is usually for poor women or homeless women who would be dangerous for them to have a child, whether it's due to drug addiction or just lack of adequate care for a child. And so it's also important to remember that there's a lot of inconsistencies between maybe northern states and southern states in how taboo abortion really is. So in New York, which has the greatest percentage of pregnancies aborted, which is 33%, it seems that it would be a more common occurrence for a woman to have an abortion due to the 218 clinics available in their state and the 29.6 abortion rate, which is comparable to Alabama's numbers, which are 9 abortion facilities, 12% aborted pregnancies, and an 8.3 abortion rate. So it's really important to remember that even though it might not be an exact factor, a lot of the evidence points to southern states having lower abortion rates than northern states, and this could be due to several maybe social factors. So now we're going to get into the pros and cons of abortion, and these are only 3 pros and cons. I'm sure there are many more, but these are some of the most prominent ones that I actually found. So we'll start out with pros, and the very first one is that a lot of women are unable or unprepared for children, so an abortion is one of the best ways they can come up with it. A lot of women, maybe especially young working women in their 20s, early 20s and 30s, they perhaps want to make a life for themselves and get enough money to be able to actually care for a family. And if an unexpected pregnancy happens to come along during that time, it can be really disheartening for them to think that they have to give up all that they've been working towards for this child, and so they think that abortion is the best option so that they can provide a better life for future children that might be more wanted. Which leads us to our next pro, which is that there are a lot of children that are unwanted, and so after they're born, they're placed into foster care systems, which we know in the United States are overflowing with children, and there are other countries that have high adoption rates, and so they bring their children here. So there's really just a surplus of children and not enough parents to be taking them. And so this can really lead for a really hard life for a child that was born and not wanted and just thrown into a foster home, because they're raised without that love and nurturing of a parent or both parents that other children might have. So it can seem that abortion would be the best option, and so a lot of people say that women should just carry their child to term and then they'll be able to be adopted. But this really isn't true. There's actually a high number of children that were carried to term and then just put into foster home. So we come to our last pro, which is one of the most common arguments for pro-abortionists. And this is that if a young girl is perhaps raped and becomes pregnant, then maybe her safest option would be abortion. And this is true, even though it's less than 0.5% of abortions are because a person was raped. That's still 0.5%, but that's still a lot of people who are raped and don't have any means to take care of a child, or they themselves are a child. So they should be allowed to make the choice whether they want to keep this child that was forced upon them without their consent at all, or if they can maybe find a better way out. And especially young girls, maybe even as young as 12 or 13, would be forced to keep their child that was given to them because someone attacked them. And so this is one of the major arguments for pro-abortion. And now we're going to go to our cons of abortion list, and we're going to start out with religion. And it's important to remember that a lot of people are very deep-seated in their religion, whether it's because their family raised them that way or they just decided on their own that that's how they wanted to live. And so we should always remember and take into consideration these people who live their life very strictly from the Bible, which actually does talk about abortion, but not abortion per se, how we see it today. So I'll share one of the scriptures in the Bible that I found that actually speaks about a fetus fatality. And it's at Exodus 21, verses 22 and 23, and it says that if men should struggle with each other, and they hurt a pregnant woman, and she gives birth prematurely, but no fatality results, the offender must pay the damages imposed on him by the husband of the woman, and he must pay it through the judges. But if a fatality does occur, then you must give life for life. And so what that last sentence means, life for life, is that if the man causes the child to die, then he himself must die. So we can see that the Bible really believes strongly that in the preciousness of life, and that it should always be respected. And so whenever we're arguing pro or con abortion, we should always take into account people's religious beliefs. So the next con actually has sort of to do with that, and it's that a lot of people believe that life can start at conception, and if this is true, then abortion is equivalent to murder of a child, which is a capital crime in multiple countries. And this can be compared to, if life starts at conception, then it can be compared to a man who killed another person and is now on death row. So if that's illegal, then why would it be allowed to kill an unborn child who is completely defenseless? And so why should they have to die and not have a chance to live their life when the woman or man or whoever it is that is in charge of that life doesn't want to take care of the child or doesn't want to keep it? It really shouldn't be allowed for the child to have to die because the parent didn't want them. Which also has to do with our last con, which is that abortion can be used as an escape route for people who practice unsafe sex or live a lifestyle that can result in unwanted pregnancies. And so these people, they do these things that can be privilege, but they abuse it and they don't want to live with the consequences of their actions, and so they just abort a child, which can cause a lot of problems. So in conclusion, we should always take into account people's feelings on abortion, and we should always make sure that we know both sides of the issue. Thank you.